first open house of 2025. We have had requests for follow-up on reevaluation and the process. So we thought we would kick off the new year with part 2 of the reevaluation process. This is related specifically to the CBA, but also non-bargaining positions. We follow a very similar process. So whether it's a bargaining unit position or a non-bargaining unit position, I think all of this information will be useful. Esther is our resident expert, and she will be leading us today.
Thank you, Cynthia. Good morning, everyone, and welcome, and happy Friday. We appreciate your joining us today for a topic that I consider to be really, really important. And we will start with a presentation, which I will go over some of the points, and then we will leave time for questions in the end. If you have submitted an application and it's in the queue, we are still working on some of these. So please, we would talk about that offline so that we can give you the attention you need in terms of individual submissions. And I'll be happy to discuss those with you separately. Okay, Lonnie, let's go. So we went through part 1 of the presentation. I don't know why I'm getting feedback here.
Anyone?
And we're going to go over the
Yep. Check your mute, please.
Lonnie, next slide, please. So the part 1, and some of you were in attendance, we talked a little bit about comprehensively assessing the position, looking at what you're doing. In other words, what are you doing now compared to what you were doing when you were hired? And that's what we mean by comprehensively assessing the position. The job reevaluation process is intended to maintain a balance between the needs of your department, the college, in terms of stability, maintaining the work that's needed in the department. Also for providing equity in terms of pay of work, equal work for equal pay, and defining your organizational roles within your department and the school. And you want a real clear picture of what the job duties are and the responsibilities in these roles. Next slide. So for what we are not addressing in terms of a reevaluation, this process is not intended to reward meritorious work performance. That would be more for something like a SUNY Chancellor's Award, but not for the reevaluation process. We recognize that our employees are invaluable in what they are doing in their offices, but this process is not intended to reward excellent work performance. It's intended to recognize that your job has changed significantly, and we want to know what you're doing now and how different it is from when you were hired, and whether it is on a much higher level in terms of complexity and in terms of job knowledge and required skills. We also want to recognize that a lot of us are working in high volume areas where the work has increased. Again, volume does not constitute a reevaluation. That would be more in terms of overtime. And temporary changes in assignments, we also recognize that sometimes you are required to work maybe outside of your title. There are provisions in the contract where we handle out of title work in a very different way. This reevaluation process is not intended for temporary assignments that might be different. And we serve changing a staff member from one role to another. This is in terms of a classroom, we're staff. We are staff, and then you cannot be changed through this process. Your role cannot change to faculty or classroom assistant. There would need to be an opening in your department for those jobs if you want to apply for those, but that we would not reclassify to those roles. So the form was introduced to you also in one of our open houses, and this is a little bit of what it looks like. We just put it in here for reference in case you need to look at it later on when you're going through this process. Lonnie, we can just go through this. It is comprehensive, and it is on point in terms of what is needed for us to be successful in our review of the application. So please be mindful of what's being asked and also respond on point so that we have as much information we need to make a good decision on your applications. Okay, that's the form. So a complete reevaluation is important to stress that what we mean by complete is that everything is completed. The job descriptions need to be included in terms of what you are doing now. So we do ask on the form, what are your tasks, the current tasks, and what are the new tasks? That's what we mean by the job description. And then all required approvals are needed on the form before we review it. And this has been facilitated with the new form, thankfully. We are now able to ensure that the signatures are there before we review it. And this is not going to be a challenge moving forward because of our new form. So we'd want to help you to focus on your job requirements. Again, we're not talking about volume. We understand there's volume, but again, that is an overtime question. And work that is similar, that you are doing, that you were hired to do, and you are being given added tasks that could be compared to what you were doing, the tasks that you are currently doing, that does not quantify for a reevaluation. You're talking about significant changes in terms of tasks. They have to be on a higher level of responsibility. And if you are saying that the responsibility has changed in terms of location from one area to another, we want to know more about that. We want to know what the position was that it was moved from, and if it is permanent that you will be taking on the responsibility. And we ask that you do not duplicate tasks. We see sometimes on the applications that tasks are just worded differently, but they are exactly the same. Also, if you submitted an application in the past and it was not approved, please do not submit the same application again. We would ask that you look at your application and consider that we need to have as much information as possible regarding the new tasks and whether or not they warrant reevaluation. Supervisors are encouraged also to look at these applications and work with your staff members to make sure that the job submission for reevaluation is comprehensive, that it includes all the components that are needed for us to understand the level of complexity has changed, the knowledge and skills have changed. And we ask that you not put in proposed schedules and titles. These are reserved for the reevaluation committee. And as we know, a downgrade due to a reevaluation will not result in the incumbent, the current member who has the job, with any changes in their salary, but when it's vacated, it will be filled at the lower schedule as determined by the committee. Job descriptions, as we know, are not all inclusive. Not everything that you have on a job description, not everything that you're asked to do will be included in your job description. We add this to all of the descriptions, and it is a statement intended to provide for the supervisor. Sal, if you would wait 1 second till I'm done, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you. The approval of the VP is required for all of these to be reviewed. And again, we have ensured that this will happen with the new form. Out of title work, as I mentioned before, is permitted within the confines of the CBA. And we would follow those directives as noted. Lonnie? So in sum, we'd like to really stress the importance of making sure that the tasks are well-defined, specific, and clearly show work that's done on a regular basis. So you would use words like initiate, prepare. When you say things like, I attended a meeting, or I attend a meeting on a regular basis, we need to know why you attend those meetings. What is your role in those meetings? Are you making presentations? Are you representing your supervisor at these meetings and making decisions? We need to know, really, what is the task? And sometimes when we look at what's been submitted, it's not clear for us. This results in us then wanting more information, needing more information to make a good decision, and also results in substantial delays in making sure these applications are processed. You would want to also ensure that you fill out the knowledge and the job matrix factor, which includes all of those categories that you see: knowledge and skill, judgment, and interpersonal relations. And really, that's it. It's more about, tell us what you did when you were hired, and tell us what you're doing now, and why you think it merits a reevaluation. And the form will be attached to this presentation, so you have it for ready reference as well. And Sal, I am ready for your question.
Thank you, Esther. So you were mentioning about the new forms and how we shouldn't be including proposed salary schedules or titles. That must be something new, though, because on the paper forms, I know you're saying no, but I could tell you that I've filled out the paper forms many times, and there's a section that actually asks you for that information. So if that's not something that a manager should be doing, why would there have been a spot for that?
Because the titles, as we know, have to be negotiated with the CBA, with the union. We would not put in a title for any one proposed new position. You can suggest, that you're looking at a certain title when you're writing this job proposal, the reevaluation, but the titles would not be finalized until the committee meets and they determine what the title and the salary schedule will be.
100%. I agree that putting it in there doesn't make it final, but I do think that there's value in the manager suggesting both the title and the salary schedule, only because I feel nobody other than the manager would really understand what the staff technically should deserve. I mean, the committee doesn't know what the person does day to day, but a manager does. That's just my 2 cents and suggestion.
And that's what we're asking you to put down on this form. Tell us what you do. We want it to be as clear as possible so that we can make the best decision in terms of where that's going. And that's really what this is about. Provide us with as much information as possible. We will discuss titles when we meet, and then if we have questions, we will reach out to the managers as well. It's not like we make this decision arbitrarily. We do include as much information as possible to make a comprehensive determination and final decision on the titles. Remember, they have to be included in the CBA, and if they are existing titles, I can see that someone would, include that. Cynthia?
So I think, Sal, the issue had been, there was almost like people were created an expectation that what they were recommending was going to be approved. And that's really not fair, a fair assumption, or, to create that expectation. So, I don't think we're opposed. We certainly want input, but at the initial stages, there shouldn't be an assumption about what the level is. And the other piece of this is the manager so your positions, your scope in your unit, but we have to look across the institution and ensure equity with, a 96 is a 96 is a 96 everywhere across the institution. So I think we're just trying to, again, manage expectations and clean this up based on the experience we've had.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So Deja asked, what is the general time frame that a reevaluation takes from start to finish. You mentioned delays due to lack of information in terms of processing applications. What's the current process to keep the applicant updated regarding the status if everything is complete? Is there any way to make this more transparent? So, yes. Go ahead, Esther.
We usually communicate with the parties that have submitted the application. Delays, it's hard to judge. We can't answer this question of the general time frame that it takes from start to finish, because it varies depending on whether or not information is lacking. It also depends on what's needed in terms of making that final decision, and in scheduling between the UCE and HR. We do this collaboratively as well. So it's not, I can't predict how much time. We are trying to expedite them as soon as possible with the information that we have available to us, but sometimes there are delays, and we apologize for that in advance.
And we, as we talked in the last open house, the implementation of the smart sheet really is going to help with the transparency, because the workflow, going forward, if you're in the process now, no, but going forward, you would get, a receipt email that you submitted. And then the next time a transaction happens, so the supervisor approved it or they didn't, or the next level, et cetera, et cetera. So there'll be much more transparency in the process. We also are much more informed around what's out there, because a lot of times, some things don't even get to HR and they're sitting on someone's desk for waiting for a signature. So that seemed to have been a problem in the past. Another issue is, like Esther said, sometimes the volume and also the complexity of the jobs, the bandwidth in HR, the availability of the committee, et cetera. So we are making a conscious effort to improve the timelines going forward.
But also important to remember here is that when it's date stamped, and it's, again, the smart sheet process will ensure this, of course, that you do get retro pay if the reevaluation is approved. So we're hoping, again, to expedite these on a more, I guess, more quickly. But with the smart sheet process, that will make it possible.
I think Keith had a question, yeah.
Yes, thank you. I believe the last time we talked about the reevaluations in this forum, I had asked whether or not we who had submitted the reevaluation request would be able to view the smart sheet, kind of like the way we do with action forms, to see where it's at and where it may be stuck. So I submitted a reevaluation request, but I do not have access to the smart sheet to view it.
Right. So we, unfortunately, because of the software or the tool, if I give you access to the sheet, you will see every submission. So unfortunately, I can't. So the way that we're going to be dealing with the transparency and the communication is through the workflow, so that when there's a status change, you get notified that something changed in the process.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I do understand, I guess, why we all can't see everybody's, because that would not be, that wouldn't be good. But I guess it would be helpful to know, I guess, how many steps there are to the process, and I think there was a flow chart or something, but, it would be good if we could somehow just see ours. I don't know if that's possible.
It's just not with the smart sheet. Again, I can't give you access, because I saw your request come through requesting access to the sheet, and I can't give you, access to it.
Yeah, it's too bad, because that would actually eliminate a lot of questions. Or having
well, so I mean, I think I'm not okay. Maybe there's a comfort level, but what you would see is basically the submission. So unless something happened, like the supervisor went in and approved it, which you would get an email, there's really nothing more for you to see. I'm not sure. Tell me maybe more about what you think you're going to get.
Okay, so for example, with action forms, you see all the people or steps in the process and where it's at. If it's stuck with budget or the EMSS office, or I can see where it's stuck and I can follow up accordingly. Like, hey, did you guys see this yet? Or I know who to ask. But just finding out, I guess, where it's at in the process is what would be helpful, is what I'm trying to say.
Right. So you'll know when you get that
Yeah, I see.
email that says, okay, it's at the supervisor level, it's at the VP level, it's now in HR. It's
All
so
right.
yeah.
Sal,
Thank
Sal?
you. Yes, I'm here. So, I understand what you're saying about the timestamp. Once the procedure that you put in the forms, it gets timestamped in HR, provided that it gets approved, you get retro from that date, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so that's great. However, I think the consensus, a lot of people have had a lot of reclassifications that have been pending for a long amount of time. My question is, so when you get a reclass, let's just say my reclass takes me from a certain salary schedule, step 5, and the next salary schedule, step 6, is going to be if my reclass gets approved, right? I'm going to that step 6 because that's just the way it works. You go to the next highest, right? My question is there any consideration for, if I was supposed to go from step 5 to step 6, but this has been pending for 3 years, shouldn't I be a couple of steps higher because of getting regular step increases?
Yeah, yes, and we are, that's absolutely right. And that is how we are calculating them. So, yeah. I mean, what you might get, for example, is immediate step increment based on the review, and then for retro, I think this is what you're referring to. When it goes through the retro pay process, it's calculated. We work with payroll on this, and we do. It might end up in changing the step that we initially proposed. You understand? So you would get a correction in terms of a salary schedule change in terms of your step.
Oh, okay. That was my question. Okay, thank you, Esther.
Yes, thank you.
So Matthew, how can you track the progress? The way that you will be informed is when there is a status change, when an event occurs in the process, right? So when a supervisor approves it, a VP approves it for committee review, the committee, makes a determination, and you get the response from me. So there aren't a ton of steps in the process. It's just that some of them take a long time, right? Depending on how long it takes for review at the VP level, how long it takes to actually look at and review all the information, do the comparables. I think this is a really complex task. And it does take time. It's not certainly the only thing that we do in HR. And then we are starting to integrate a step where the employee and the supervisor get to communicate with the committee to review it and ask questions. So I think you'll find that there's going to be a lot more transparency built into the process, to the extent that we can. So you need to search your emails for correspondence. Well, okay, maybe there's something else going on here, but why don't we talk about, if you have one in process right now or something, and you're looking for specific information, we can talk offline. How's that?
Right, exactly. Matthew, I'll be in touch with you regarding the status of your application. So I think that's what we need. Thank you.
Any other questions? We'll post this session with our other YouTube videos. We will be confirming the schedule of topics for the rest of the spring semester. And so if there's something that you want us to talk about, if you have any suggestions, please let us know. Just shoot us a note through the Solution Center or give us a call. Either way, we're available. All right, thanks, and have a great long weekend, and happy spring.
Dinesh, I'll answer that question. I'll give you a call and answer that question. Okay?
Thank you.